As if you weren't tone deaf before you are now. All right, guys. Good evening. This is August 2019, and we're going to do a demo, or John is going to demo, talk about hollowing, and this is one of his projects called Planet Mesquite. Nice little project. I'm going to let John Tisdale talk about his project, and we'll let him start his demo.
Okay. Thanks. Well, this is, like I said, Planet Mesquite. The log found me in early 2016. It was, and in fact, somebody tried to steal it out of a lady's front yard in Karnes County, Texas, which is just a little bit north of Corpus Christi, over in the King Ranch area. They cut down the tree. Are we okay on, maybe get this a little further away. But anyway, it wound up where the heirs, the lady died, and the people went down and found that it was laying on the ground. Came up here. Ken sent an email. You know, occasionally we get emails from Ken, and on this tree is down or that tree is down. Well, in this case, it was somebody wants to sell this log, and if anybody's stupid enough, give him a call. And so I did, and so we came to an agreement, and I wound up with it. And from that point forward, I had to modify my lathe. The lathe that I have is a 24-inch one-way, so it's a big one. But obviously, it wasn't going to hold something like this, so I had to build a system out on the other end of it. But the typical outboard, where it just cantilevers out from a faceplate, that wouldn't work. So I'll be putting some pictures out. I was hoping we would have some, but those weren't ready in time. But built some I-beams out and just built a lathe with about a 40-inch capacity. And that's how we put this on. Because initially, this was powered with a, would you believe, a 1.5-inch spur drive. So this did not start out life on a faceplate at all. But anyway, so it went through Randy Smith, who's there in the middle. He helped me with the tooling on it and the design of the lathe, so he was there pretty much for the whole process. And so I started actually cutting on it in summer of 2016. Then the hollowing process commenced in 2017. This piece produced over 400 gallons of shavings just from the inside. So I had a big 55-gallon trash can, and so I filled it up 7 times plus. And so that was a lot of shavings. And it had its moments, as you might guess something like this would. So I was constantly, people were saying, why don't you try to finish out the inside like you do the outside? Well, after you get a first few catches and you say, probably the next catch, this whole thing's going to come flying apart. Because they will do that. I've had, and it's kind of like a grenade in your shop when one of them really comes apart. So with all the aggravation of this one, opted not to push it any further. So it's about 3/4 of an inch thick. In some cases, 5/8 of an inch thick. It started out at 1,000 pounds, and it's now just a little bit under 60 pounds. So there was quite a bit of weight removed. Pardon me?
A lot of wood that was removed.
Yes, sir. It was. And of course, the things that you wish you had videos of when Randy was over there, and we put this on the lathe. Just putting it on was a pretty big task. And my overhead crane system uses barn door hangers that are rated at 450 pounds. Well, that dog don't hunt, you know, and that wasn't going to work. So Randy comes over with his engine, you know, lift. And so we put the engine lift on. So we moved it up, and if you've ever hoisted an engine, you know the legs go out. And so as we were coming up to the lathe with the legs out, it wouldn't be far enough over to get it to the spur drive. And there's no way you're going to move this thing. So we folded up one of the legs, and I was hanging off of it to counter the weight, and Randy was pushing. Both of us about 70 and years old, and like I say, that was its own. The next movie will be Jackass the Woodturner, and but that was we actually got it on there, and it took a little bit of nerve just to turn it on. I didn't believe Clay Smith with One Way, the president of One Way, when he said, "Whatever you do, don't spin it to start the thing." He said, "You let the motor start it." And he was right. He pushed the button, and it was so off balance, I couldn't turn it over, or it was very difficult to turn over. It was just grossly off balance, and plus 1,000 pounds. When at first we were trying to turn it over. Yeah, so it was chunky. It was kerchunkin is what you call that. And I never got it above 100, about 120, maybe 150 RPM. So we never got any faster than that. So it's what you call patience is what's required when the points are flying around, that infrequently. And you just get a terrible shock. It took a long time to get the outside done, and then to get the inside done was its own trials. But anyway, this is Planet Mesquite. Like I say, I'll be putting out some additional information on it for the club members. One of the interesting things is after it's finished, it takes multiple barrier and sealer coats, because the top coat you're looking at here is an automotive clear coat. And when you think about it, the automotive guys, they spend probably 100 times more money or 1,000 times more money than woodworking guys ever will on research and development, on coatings, on the integrity of coatings. That's what they're all about. And so why not take advantage of it? Well, to take advantage of it, you have to make the surface look pretty much like an automotive surface would be, a primed automotive surface. It has to be smooth. And so that's what all the sealer and the barrier coats. So there's about 12 of those on here. But that was the process. And as you can tell, some of these openings it was kind of interesting when you were cutting those from the inside. I can tell you that. But anyway, that's Planet Mesquite. It's very much a makeshift stand. The pieces are going to all be done out of stainless steel that are done out of wood now, and that will change out. But wanted to bring it here to show it. Is there any questions on Planet Mesquite?
Any epoxy or CA in it?
Pardon me?
Any epoxy or CA?
Yes to epoxy, no to the CA. I don't really use the CA glues at all. One of the pictures that I'm going to be doing a book on it, and when you're dealing with bark inclusions and things like that, well, they're nice and smooth and now, but they weren't, before the process started. And so I found that I use Aero Marine glue, epoxy, and with Aero Marine, they have a very low viscosity. It's a relatively low viscosity. And you can shoot it through a 22 gauge hypodermic needle. And so it took a little bit of playing with that to figure out how to do it. But if you just stick that, it's a pretty tiny needle. It's not, it's like you'd give a person a shot with. but you can put it in between and then deliver that epoxy right down in between the bark and the wood and fill that up. And it does two things. One, it secures the bark to the wood, because finishing the bark is something that you want on a piece like this. And then, but for the larger areas, I used, it's a West product called G-Flex. And G-Flex maintains flexibility. And where most epoxies are 70-degree cures, G-Flex is 40-degree cure. And it's really crazy stuff. You can patch your boat underwater with G-Flex. It's interesting stuff. But it's real thick, and it's real painful to use, and it's real noxious, but it's good stuff. So anyway, so all of the black areas here that are around the bark and all, that is epoxy, but no CA glue at all. Any other questions? Okay. Pardon me? Oh, when did I complete it? Well, if the answer is when did it first go on the stand? About 30 minutes ago. I got the final coat on it, and it really kind of the first of the year, or actually last year. The stand took on a life of its own. Hey, everyone in this room, we're guys that work in the round, right? We put stuff on a lathe and we do stuff, and in fact, I heard a interesting analysis. It was on public radio, but there was a gal that had written for Dallas Morning News and for the Fort Worth paper, and she had recently written a novel, and she had read Stephen King's book on how to write novels to do it, and he had a term that he used in his book, and it was called pantser. And I'd never heard that term before. I said, what's a pantser? It doesn't mean anything to me. That doesn't communicate. And the term pantser came up when they had asked if she wrote an outline. And she said, no, because according to Stephen King, I'm a pantser. And a pantser is a seat of the pantser, right? So that's what most of us are. We're, when you think about putting a log on the lathe and sticking a tool in it and seeing, kind of where you want to go. Now the spindle guys, like Brian Evans and like Kevin, they have to plan. Sometimes I guess you do spindles, and you've got to plan on that, especially if you're trying to do more than one. You don't have to plan on one. You got to plan on two, because you got to do something. You got to do a repeat, which takes a little bit more skill than certainly than I have. But anyway, so that's it. It's finished about a year ago, and it took quite a while to get the stand going. And Glenn Boudreau will answer. I mean, I talked to him, I don't know how many times, and Randy, what do you think about this design and that design? And of course, it was an involved process. Yeah?
What will you do with it eventually? Sell it for a pile of money?
I don't want to. I've had some interest, but because I hadn't been able to take pictures of it because it hadn't been on a stand, me out in my front yard with it on the grass, with a big grin on my face, doesn't communicate much. And but I'm going to have it photographed and going to send some pictures around. I want it to be in a public space. It's really not appropriate for most homes. Most of my work in the past goes into homes with larger homes, obviously. And but this is just, to me, it's kind of beyond that. And so I'd like for it to stay in the area. I don't, I've got work in Australia and Bermuda and various places, and I kind of would like to see it and hug it every now and then. Shipping it and setting it up and all. I assume those things can be solved, but But anyway, it was a kick. I don't know that I'll ever do another one, but it was quite a treat. Although you can get this material, you get it if you go south of San Antonio between on the way to Corpus Christi. You're going by the east side of King Ranch, and that's where mistletoe burl mesquite, that's where you find it. Now, if you're going to drive down there and think you're going to find it, you're wrong. You don't find it. You go to somebody that deals in it, and you get to pay for it. Because the guys that are doing slab tables and things like that, like a piece like this, I found out where the price was set. The guy that I buy my other logs from is Harold Jambers, and some of y'all know Harold Jambers. He's been around a long time, and he sells mesquite. And he offered the lady, before she went in the hospital, for this log, and I just found this out in July when I was down there picking up some other wood. He offered her $2,500 for this, for the log, and he'd have to cut down the tree to do that, but he offered her $2,500. And if you think about it, if you resaw and take planks every 2 inches, then you get a huge yield out of it. A lot of really, really cool tables, and you can do a lot of things with it. Where with this, I brag about, 400 gallons of shavings, which is kind of a waste. Well, I think so, but it makes for. I didn't want to pay $2,500 for it. I can tell you that. Yeah, $500 was that's what I paid for the log, and that was. So did you contact the guy? Hey, I'm glad I did too. Any other questions on Planet Mesquite? We'll go on to the demo. Can I move over here now? Is that okay? Okay. The reason I move over here is to me the working. This is the hollowing end of the lathe, and for years now, I don't use a captive system. A captive system, to me, you kind of lose touch with what's going on, especially with the D-handle systems. They're heavy, they're bulky, there's a lot of hardware. And I started using this years ago, and it really works well. And what it is, if I don't know what kind of picture we're getting here, but we have a tool rest. And this banjo is really problematic on this lathe. It grips it. You can't move it very well. But let's see if I can get in here and adjust it, because it will take some shavings. And who is here that has never hollowed before? Is there anybody here that has never hollowed? Hey, well then you're going to do the rest of the demo. And because it is easy. And let's see, so let me get this like this. Actually, see, on my lathe at home, it's up high like this. My spindle height is 54 inches off the ground. Well, that's ridiculous as far as doing outside work. You can't do that. So it's on some big 2x8s, and it comes out, and so I'm standing on a platform. So the lathe itself, when I'm on this side of it, I'm at the normal 42 or something like that, a normal person height lathe. And but then I step off, and I'm at 52, and you'll see the reason in just a second. So let me let's see this. I guess we can tighten it up. Huh?
Did you make that tool rest? The tool rest.
Yeah, what about it?
Did you make
I had it made. Kimbrell made it in, it's a machine shop here. In fact, John Sensorbo, that's back there in the back, uses those guys all the time and has one of these tool rests. That's a pretty good machine shop, and he's got the plans on it. It's going to set you back, $400. Kevin, you got one, didn't you? Where's Kevin? I think he found a place to go take a nap, and I understand. Yeah, so Kevin, do you use it much, or have you kind of broke the code with it, or? I guess I'm dedicated to it.
I had to do some grinding on it to even it up.
You do what now?
I had to do some grinding to even it up.
Now, this tool right here, okay, let me put this aside. This is the scraper. And does anybody know how to turn this thing on? I tell you what, if I could have you know how to operate this one?
Lathe?
Yeah, I've never played with it. How many RPMs? Whoa.
Less than that.
I think it unthreaded.
Yeah, it's probably going in. Here.
Y'all almost had some excitement there. I think it's
You're not straight. Can you come up? There you go. Gotcha.
there we go. So one of the points I was going to make is don't hit buttons that you don't know what they're for. And also a lathe with a locking feature for the faceplate is a good thing. Okay, so we're tight now, I think. Or should, yeah. Well, I mean, and we're going. It slowed too quick. Is what happened. But how do you turn this thing down?
Set screw for this.
No. So we want to go about 300. Can you go?
No, let's turn it that way.
Slow.
That's slow.
Put me at 300 RPMs, and I'm getting out of the way. Yeah.
That's
300 RPM is good.
That's too much your vibrator.
Huh? Well, it's probably going to be a little off because I was.
Dancer would be jiggling all over the place.
Huh?
My hula girl would be about 230. How about that?
All right, that's good. So, but anyway, so the way this works is, does anybody do you have a Sharpie? Is there a Sharpie anywhere that we can? My line has. Never mind. This is good enough. Okay. Here's the principle of the way that I do this. One is, I don't like bending over. Hey, that's a black one though. I just thought I need a silver one. Black on black doesn't help. But the trick is not to bend over when you're working, especially if you're doing hours on larger pieces. So I can stand here and do the hollowing with a perfectly straight back for hours on end. And if you bend over where you're gripping and doing this kind of stuff, you can forget that. And also doing that kind of stuff, and I do a lot of Mesquite, although they're not none like that as far as size goes. But there's always a possibility of it coming apart. And so if you're standing at the business side of the lathe, where if it comes apart, it's going to get you, that can be a bit of a problem as well. And so anyway, so you just... A 3-horsepower lathe is a wonderful thing. Yeah, this doesn't have the horsepower that would be good to have. Yeah, if we can change that real quick, I can. Huh? Put it on low speed. This is, if you can figure it out. While he's doing that, hands on who's used Raleigh Monroe tooling. Is anybody here? I know, John, you have. In fact, I was using the old Raleigh Monroe. You bought the new one, and I was telling you how much I hated it, and you weren't having any troubles. And so finally I got the new one, and I'm able to use both of them now. And if you use the Raleigh Monroe, it's a shielded carbide cutter, like a Hunter carbide cutter that you can, get from, I guess, here or from Steve, and it lets you take a very fine shaving. And people really had a problem when they first bought this, and there were a lot of complaints, and a lot of them tried to send their tools back. And with a shielded cutter tool like this, there's something there's a counterintuitive aspect of it, and that is, if you say, hey, I'm going to get a lot done, and I'm going to open that guy up, I'm going to take big, thick shavings, all you got to do is clog it. It clogs with thick shavings. When you go thin, it's just much better behaved. And also, it's kind of like, we on low range now? Good. And okay. Who's never, okay, you've never hollowed? Come on. This is when John Sensorbo back there, who is now selling in galleries and doing really, really well on his stuff. Of course, he was doing well before he started turning. When he contacted me to show him how to, some things about how to do this, and you can tell how much attention I'm paying right now. You can drink a beer while you're hollowing. It's not a problem. It's not when you're chainsawing. I'll grant with you. I'll go with you on that. But and you don't. Yeah, towards the middle, my whole. Okay, so you ready? Go for it. So now, okay, okay. Let me make another point. I don't know how much of y'all do flat woodworking, but if planing and things like that, this is your power area. If you're like planing a board or sawing and all this kind of stuff, you always do it down here, right? You work low. That's the power area. This is the control area. So you never do anything that requires a lot of power up here. And then finesse is right in front of you. But so this, again, we're talking purely control, and we're not struggling with anything. Now, with the way that I designed this is I have you can barely see it there, but a Sharpie mark that's silver that lets you know the cutter is level. And so what I'd like for you to do, so just right there on the bar. So, because you're not going to be able to see the cutter. So if you'll just stand here and just hold it kind of like this, okay, like you would maybe a bat, and just position the mark straight up. And it's not like something that you have to be overly concerned about, oh my God, what's going to happen when I hit? Just doesn't do anything. So it's not going to get you. You can go through a piece like this and another 20 just like this and never, ever get a catch of any sort and never get into trouble.
And you don't have to have that flat on the tool.
Well, now, that's a great comment. One of the nice things about this tool rest here is, and to keep it flat is good. You want to cut her at 9 o'clock. If you're a little bit above, you got to remember my leverage off the end, my end is way in there. I'm just 3 or 4 inches. It's not a big deal. And so I've got all the advantage out here. I don't, and you can tell how hard this is, right? Huh? Oh, no, the cutter is flat. I try to keep the cutter flat. You can do it, but when you start turning it like that, you're starting to cut now. And what that does is having a tooling pin, when you're the guy that's up here holding the tool on a tool rest and trying to use the old Stewart's or the old, who was it, David Ellsworth, yeah, his first tools and everything, where you do this. Yeah, if you're David Ellsworth, maybe you could do it just fine. But to me, I don't want to stand up there and hold anything. I want to be back here. And I don't want to have to pay that much attention to what I'm doing. It's kind of like mowing the yard. If all you think about is mowing the yard while you're mowing the yard, you're in trouble. Go for it. And again, like, there you go. There you go. 310's good.
That ledge short. See that? I'll go into that. I'll just pull on this a little bit and screw it in. One of our legs is off.
Now, don't stick it in the center right now because the center is off. When I drill the hole, what I usually do, I'll start with, in fact, the Milwaukee tool has great Forstner bits, and I use a 2 9/16, which is their biggest one, and I'll just punch a hole before I start the hollowing process. I'll punch a hole as deep as I can go, usually all the way in. So the hole right now is about 1 inch from the base. So it would. Not a big deal. And I'll show you something else that you might find kind of interesting. Is we're talking about the undercut of the lip. So I'm cutting the underside of the lip right now. Now this cutter is kind of old and it's probably overused. It should be changed. But it's just that. Anybody want to try it? Yeah. Oh, a piece this size? Oh, half inch. There's a lot of people that want to do thicker stuff continually, and that's fine. But I think too thin and you lose critical mass. It needs to have some substance. So maybe if it weighs 10 pounds, something like that. And for a piece, it's maybe 20 inches. Now this piece is, because this is kind of a small lathe. This piece is about 17-inch diameter right now. I had to turn it down at home. But half inch, 5/8, even 3/4 is nothing bad. I was going to bring the calipers up here. I made my own calipers, so it's of course right now one of the things that'd be hard to demonstrate right now because we're probably 4 inches thick. Want to try it? I promise we won't laugh. Okay, so the magic mark is that right there. Just so no, wait a minute. So there you go. That's it.
Yeah, it'll knock me right in the head.
And you can kind of feel, in fact, you were there. See, you lift it up.
This way up.
Yeah, not that much. But what you want to do is feel. You feel it when it goes flat because you've got 2 points. And lift it up a little bit more above that because you want to be on the far edge. And this is a little high for you.
It has a lot of sawdust.
So when do you have to clear the chips out? And they get in your way.
Well, we can do that. Now, normally, what I've started doing is I just blow it out with compressed air, and so, and in fact, there's not enough to worry about in there right now. You could really kind of load it up, pretty good. Go ahead and turn me on again. Now, when I'm pushing in, I want to stay right on the pin. So sometimes it'll start wanting to get off the pin, so you have to fight it a little bit and push it this way. But and then when it gets bigger, But one thing about the Raleigh Monroe is this is a pressure cut system. If you overly finesse the Raleigh Monroe, or I think any of the shielded cutters, you're going to get into trouble really, really quick because they clog and they stop cutting. And so you can see that this one is totally clogged, and but it's still going to cut because with the pin there, I'm putting tremendous pressure against this. And you don't have to and of course, as you and you're hearing cutting. I mean, it's cutting the whole time. Now, is this appropriate for small hollow forms? I don't think so. I usually have a hole that I can get my hand inside. Anyway, that's kind of what it's all what this is all about. And another tool that I brought. Let's see, Kevin, would you? Yeah, hand me that if you would. And we are way too thick to even think about this, but I wanted to bring it anyway. And in fact, we were lucky enough to get some. This is titanium right here, so this bar is. If it was steel, it would be seriously heavy. This is a bit larger, but a lot lighter than that one. And so what I did is board this out for a 1/2-inch piece, and so we can put different inserts into it. And so this is a beveled. This is about a 20-degree angle or something like that. And I think y'all have heard me make reference to the toothy scraper. Has there anybody heard the term toothy scraper? I've kind of mentioned it before. And what it is you take a scraper blade. Now this is a 50-cent scraper blade. You get them at CDC surplus. And this was a wire stripper, for an industrial harness making manufacturer, electronics manufacturer. And these are good M42 cobalt steel. And so with a Dremel tool and a little bit of work, you can make a scraper blade. And it kind of works out nicely. And then if you score it with a Dremel tool, every 1/8 of an inch or something like that, there's an interesting phenomena that happens. And that is when you start scraping across, the corners of each tooth start taking a shaving. And so as you're cleaning up, you wouldn't use it at this point because it doesn't take heavy shavings. It's very light. But when you're cleaning up the interior of a bowl, but certainly the interior of a hollow form, and you've got some tool marks and some things like that are problematic, you can clean it up really, really fast with this. Of course, it doesn't take but 2 seconds, and it's almost like 5-grit sandpaper that you can sharpen. It kind of works in the same way. Now, I've tried points on this, and I didn't like that. So, but just a flat, rounded surface like that, and I have some broad ones as well that I put a big arc on. They're about yay wide, and again they've got the scores, the cuts every 1/8 of an inch from a Dremel tool, and it just really works neat. So I'd recommend it to for whatever you're doing. I don't know that I need to just stand up here and take a huge amount of time. But yeah, sure. Light, isn't it? Titanium is wonderful stuff. But if you haven't gone to CDC, and he's always has a big box of those cutters there that he sells for. Used to sell them for 50 cents each, and I assume that he does. But this is good stuff, and again, it lets you, scraping is always the finish cut, but this is kind of in between, really taking material out. But when you're taking tool marks out and stubborn tool marks and maybe little rises, you always feel that little bump, that you wish you could get out. And you don't know whether to stick the tool back in and take big chunks, big shavings out. So the toothy scraper can work really, really well. And I've got probably a dozen of these things that I'll, sharpen all up at one time. Pardon me? Well, the only problem is you patent it, then you got to go make a whole lot of them, and then you're turning into a tool salesman. This is one of the few, most guys that are up here showing tools, they're selling tools.
Will you cut the brooms with?
Pardon me?
Will you cut the teeth in it with?
A Dremel tool.
Or a Dremel? Just cut that with a Dremel?
Yeah, just freehand. And if one's a 16th and another one's 3/16 or whatever, you don't worry about it. Just, we're pantsers around here, right? On the top, because what that does, if you'll look at this,
Okay, you're not cutting them in here. You're
No.
just cutting them down there.
you just cut it across the top, and maybe a 30-second deep. I mean, you're not doing a lot. But if you just score it all the way back, now this one's about done. It's about used up right here. But I'll just take another tool and just redo it. You can, and so it should be a little deeper probably than this one is right here. But it is. But when you bring it across, and what you're doing is you're cutting also with the corners right here. So it's acting like low grit sandpaper on the end of a tool that you can resharpen, that stays alive.
So this is set on a 22 year?
About 20 or.
And this is probably about a 22, so you come up with about a 45 that's sitting in.
I don't know if it would work at something as steep as a 45 or not. I don't think you'd want to do that because you're not cutting on a burr.
Not cutting that, but because this is down, this is back. The angle that hits the wood is going to be, it looks like it's going to be about a 45.
The relief underneath on the bezel. I don't know. I probably, just like with gouge grinds and things like that, I just seat of the pants it, and I don't worry about it. But I do it about like that.
Fancy.
Yeah. I mean, why? And of course that I can't remember where I got that real heavy washer right there, but that kind of, stabilizes it.
Let me put that close up to the camera so everybody can see it.
I don't know where's the camera? That's me. You don't want to look. You don't want to do that. Okay, so you got to focus. Okay, there you go. So you see the bit and the screw holding it, and then of course that's the angle. And if you do something 10 degrees different, it'll probably work just as good. I don't know if you need to get hung up on exact dimensions, but it's a cheap thrill. You can go to CDC, you can buy one for 50 cents, and you can also get the Dremel cutter wheels from him cheap. and go home and try it out and see if you like it. If you do, great. If you don't, lost 50 cents. They are stripper blades, and so if you think of aircraft harness systems and automobile harness systems and things like that, there's a lot of connectors, and they're auto-stripping wire to make all these complex harnesses. And so they have these massive machines, and so if you want 10,000 22-gauge wires with the end stripped for a crimping machine, because you're going to crimp a contact on the end, then you send it through this thing, and it auto-strips the wires and stacks them neatly. And these stripper blades, they'll use them for a while, then they'll discard them, and CDC gets them, and they sell them to. Yeah, just wire stripper blades, and but it's for big automated, $50,000, stripping systems. That and again, CDC has a box of these things, and it's really kind of cool steel. I mean, it's all M42. You need to have M42 for longevity, and so they're really a superior steel. Pardon me? CDC located? They're on Beltline Road. That way. Yeah, so there's a nursery right there. It's before you get to Plano Road, so it's between 75 and Plano Road before you get to Plano Road from 75. It's a little strip center at the end, and take cash.
Grove and Plano.
Yeah, Grove and Plano. Yeah, exactly.
No credit cards.
No credit cards. That's exactly right. You could write them a check, but cash or check.
And they close Monday.
And they close Monday. You got it.
They got the drill bits and everything you think of.
Yeah, I mean, you can buy end mills there. You can buy anything you want to buy. So, is there any other questions or? Pardon me? There you go. I was going to wonder where I got those. Well, that's really it for me. Thanks for holding everything down. Oh.